Hello, everybody. We're really pleased to have Irene because Irene has been a teacher of languages in schools, so she knows all about connecting with people across different cultures and languages. And now she's a tour manager, taking tours all across the world, going to the Arctic in a moment.
I am indeed.
Which is wonderful. So perhaps you would like to give us some, when we're thinking about connections, it has a very Greek name, phatix, making connections with people. But if we don't make connections properly with people, they never listen to us, which is very important in teaching and in tour managing.
Absolutely, yes.
So perhaps you'd like to give us a couple of examples of how you feel this is very important.
Yes, your role. Yes. So good morning, Rosie, and good morning, everybody. Yes, so I'll adjust myself to the camera if that's okay. So I have spent a number of years as a teacher, as you say, of languages. So I'm going to try and give you a few examples, first of all, of when I was a teacher. Now, obviously, I was teaching French and German, so the whole point was that I was trying to encourage people to be able to communicate in those languages. There were problems, I think, and one or two examples I'll give you. I remember particularly an initiative that came in because obviously our styles of teaching have changed in languages, as in all subjects, and edicts have been given over the number of years which dictated, if you like, how you should teach. And I remember one that I felt particularly uncomfortable with, but obviously as a teacher, subject to being assessed myself as part of Ofsted and the national curriculum and everything, I had to go along with. One of those was when we introduced where we had to teach solely in the foreign language in the classroom. So essentially the foreign language, the room that you taught in became a German-only room, for example, which meant that as soon as the pupils came into the room, everything was done in German. Now, for me, that caused a problem because these were young people and they needed to come in feeling comfortable. They needed to come in and get themselves settled down. It was important to make a rapport with them, to have a few words, to have a bit of a joke with them, to make sure they felt okay. And whilst I was comfortable doing that in German, they weren't.
No.
They didn't have those skills to do it. So whilst I could say, wie geht's and all the rest of it, how are you, everything okay, what did you do at the week? They couldn't respond to me. And that had to be done. You had to do that little session in English first in order to make the kids feel at home. Mm. And then once that was established and you'd had a word about, have you been riding this weekend? How, all this sort of thing that showed you had this connection with the kids, you could then start to teach.
Yeah.
But when they introduced this idea of only speaking German, all of that was gone. And I think that was to the detriment of the relationship.
Yeah.
I really do. I think, I'm sure, I don't know whether that's still the case, but I'm sure that's gone out of the window now. So, but that was an issue that I had at one time when I was teaching. Thinking of another occasion, I'm trying to think which one it was. I was trying to think of, and I've forgotten about it now. Let me have a think. Rosie, we did talk about it before. Can you remind?
Right, you were going to talk about how you make connections with people in your present role.
Oh, in my present role, certainly. I was trying to think. I'll give you another example of teaching. But that was the one that was. But coming back to teaching, I do think that the pressure to convey, to push through the national curriculum, to push through the information, to meet the exam targets, has meant that there is such a pressure in the classroom.
Yeah.
That those sort of niceties, if you like,
phatix,
have gone out of the window.
Yeah.
In terms of my work that I do as a tour manager, the connection that I make with the group is very, very important because I am taking a very wide range of people with me at various ages, of various needs, various backgrounds, various experience of foreign travel, various experience of going with a group. And generally speaking, I try to phone people before I meet up with them. This was a requirement that we had to do as part of my job, that we made a phone call just to introduce myself as the tour leader, because I was the person that was with them for the 10 days or 2 weeks or however long they were going. And I found that first phone call very, very important because it gave me a lot of information about them. People who perhaps were nervous about travelling. And in the course of a 2-minute phone call, there's a lot of information that you can gather where they're coming from. And when I then meet them, because I meet them to take them on the train usually, or at the airport, I've already got a little bit of background. And so I can make references. Oh, did you have you've traveled, I know you've travelled from Bournemouth today. I hope you had a good journey by train. I hope there were no problems with it. And things like people who perhaps were travelling on their own, who were a little bit nervous, you can link into that. So that sort of conversation is important. Now, there's a move towards just doing this by email. For me, that doesn't give me anything back at all.
No. You haven't got the voice.
I haven't got the voice. I haven't got the tone of voice. I haven't got the little bits in beyond.
We know that's the most important. It's more, the non-verbal is more important than the verbal in making the message.
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're very lucky because we have with us Stasia, who is dual heritage. She has a Polish father and an English mother. She studied languages at university. She's been head of a huge special needs department in a school. And she's been, as she is a doctor, she has taught in higher education, and she has a huge amount of knowledge about the issues of culture, language and communication. So she's going to tell us something about this, because there are 3 areas we look at in this module. We look at cognitive theory, we look at practices for teaching a language, and we look at the whole issue of transferable abilities. So, Stasia, you can tell us about some of the issues, and they're very interesting ones, about being dual heritage from the point of view of growing up and perhaps teaching. Over to you.
Well, I was brought up in Manchester, and from the age of 4, I attended 2 schools. One was a Polish school on a Saturday morning for 5 hours. And the rest of the time, I eventually went to English school, because the schools with the English schools were actually in the locality and near my house. To get to the Polish school, we had to travel quite a way. But I remember when I was 4, because my father was Polish and my mother was English, we used to speak mostly English at home, although my dad did try and force me to do homework on a Friday night for Polish school, which I really resented. And I was a little bit naughty, really, not going along with that. But he did speak Polish to me at home as well. But when I went to Polish school, most of the Polish children who went, they had both an English mother and an English father. But there was a friend I had whose mother was Irish and father was Polish, and I tended to mix with her and felt quite at home with her, as opposed to the rest of the group. But when I was at Polish school, it was a little bit of a mystery to me, because they would speak Polish the whole time. And I got to know the Polish prayers by rote and by heart, but didn't actually know what they meant. But I could say them word perfect by chanting them. And then we'd go into class. I used to enjoy dancing and music. I used to enjoy reading out aloud, because I thought I did that quite well. But I really latched into visual representations of language through books and pictures, and that's how I kind of gained some knowledge of nouns and sentences. But I used to get a little bit bored, because the talking went on for so long in Polish. I used to look out of the window, and it was a poorer area of Manchester, and there was always a lot of crime going on the street. So I was more interested in looking at what the police cars were doing out of the window, or looking at the ants crawling up the window. And I think from a very young age, I developed quite a good periphery vision. But as I got older, into teenage years, I possibly started appreciating the dual aspects of my heritage. Moreover, there were concerts at the Polish club, and I used to love music and singing and dancing. So my father taught me lots of Polish songs, and was a bit of a comedian, so it was fun. And so it kind of became balanced in a way that I was from a dual heritage, and that there were advantages in both sides of what I was trying to achieve. And then when I came to 18, I did study French at A-level, English, um, and um, and then I decided that I would like to be a teacher, because after sitting for so long in these lessons and 5 extra hours on a Saturday morning, I thought, sometimes is the teacher actually communicating effectively with me, and listening or trying to work out what my needs are, because I could sit there looking very good and obedient, but in fact I was probably being naughty and playing games under the table, trying to hide something in a box, or doing a diversion activity, which is not a good.
Well, that's very interesting, isn't it? Because you began to understand some of the issues, and I remember I first came to know you because I was called into your school because teachers, not you, but other teachers, had communication problems in this very multicultural setup, and we found when we tested and assessed them that 12-year-olds. 80% of the 12-year-olds in your school had a language age of 5.
They had reading ages below 8. Yeah, we had to screen all the children. So we screened 180 children, and found that 75% of them basically couldn't read or write, and then they were getting into problems because in the secondary school where the teachers were teaching their subjects, they said the children were misbehaving and not paying attention, but in fact they found that the children couldn't access the work. So there's a big training job to do.
So thank you, Stasha. And I think it's exceptional that you've had that background and really understand, because I know everyone thought you were the perfect teacher. I'll never forget, I came to your school once. I was getting my stuff out of the car, and dropped everything. A little boy came running over, and he took me to your department. Oh, he sang your praises. And his father was in prison. He had a very difficult life, but he said you had brought him out of himself. So
Well, I think it's
very
makes things like interactive and fun, really.
yeah.